Welcome to English with Zenko Master. Get ready to learn something new today.
I slammed the car door and stood still. My hands were shaking. The cold air touched my face, but I did not feel it. I had driven for hours with no plan. I needed to get away from everything. I needed time to think. A few hours earlier, I saw something I would never forget. He was sitting with her. They were laughing. Her hand touched his arm. His face was soft and full of joy. I had always feared this. I had asked him about her. He told me she was only a friend. He told me I was the one he loved. But now I knew the truth. We had spent 5 years together. We shared a flat, a car, and a dream. I supported him when he left his job to start his own company. I gave him my time, my heart, and even my money. I believed in him. I thought we were building a future together. I thought I knew him. I was wrong. I drove to my sister's flat. She was away on holiday with her boyfriend. She had offered me the keys weeks ago. I never thought I would use them this way. But now I was here, alone. The flat was small but quiet. It was in a village far from the city. No one knew I was there. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to explain what had happened. I didn't even understand it myself. The next few days passed slowly. I stayed in bed most of the time. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. I didn't answer my phone. I didn't check my messages. I couldn't eat much. Even water tasted strange. Sometimes I went for short walks. There was a river behind the building. I walked along the path, watching the water move. It was the only thing that made me feel a little calm. I didn't meet anyone. I didn't want to. The silence helped me think, even if it hurt. But the questions never stopped. Why did he lie? Why wasn't I enough? Did he ever love me? Or was I just someone to hold until someone better came along? One afternoon, I saw a couple walking near the river. They were holding hands and smiling. The woman leaned on the man's shoulder. I turned away and walked home fast. It hurt too much. Then, 5 days later, my phone rang. At first, I didn't want to answer, but something made me pick it up. The number was new. I waited a moment, then answered in a quiet voice. It was his brother. He sounded afraid. He spoke fast. My ex had been in a car accident. The road was wet. His car had slipped and hit a tree. He was now in the hospital. He was hurt, but alive. And he had asked for me. I didn't say anything. I stood in silence, holding the phone to my ear. His brother asked again. Would I come? He didn't know who else to call. Their mother was abroad. He had work. He said my ex had said my name more than once. I hung up and stood still for a long time. Then, without thinking much, I packed a small bag and got in the car. I drove back to the city. The roads looked the same, But my world had changed. The hospital was big and quiet. I walked to the front desk. My voice shook as I gave his name. A nurse nodded and led me down a long hallway. The lights were bright. The floor was clean and cold. When I reached his room, I stopped at the door. He looked different. His face was pale. One arm was in a sling. There were small cuts near his eyes. His lips were dry. His eyes were closed. But when he heard my steps, he opened them. He saw me and tried to smile. His lips moved, but no sound came. He looked weak, not like the man I used to love, not like the man who hurt me. I walked in and sat by the bed. I didn't say a word. I didn't touch him. I just sat and watched the machine beside him. Later, a doctor came in. He said the accident was serious, but my ex was lucky. He needed help at home for a few days after discharge. The doctor asked if I could help. I didn't answer at first. That night, I slept in my sister's flat again. I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking of his face. In the morning, I said yes. I moved into the guest room of his flat. It was strange to be back. Everything was still there. Our photos. Our books. The old red mug I used every morning. It felt like a different life. He could not walk much. He needed help with daily things. I cooked. I gave him his medicine. I cleaned the kitchen. I washed his clothes. He didn't ask questions. He didn't talk about the past. I said little. I didn't want to open old wounds. But inside, I felt confused. I had come to help, not to forgive. I reminded myself of the pain, of the lies, of how he had made me feel small. But each day, something small changed. He started saying thank you. He asked if I slept well. He listened when I spoke. He didn't say sorry, not yet. But I could see it in his eyes. He was softer. He didn't argue. He didn't act like he knew better. One night I couldn't sleep. I stood in the kitchen with a glass of water. The room was quiet. The clock ticked softly. I looked out the window. The city lights were far, but they still glowed. He came in slowly and leaned against the door. He looked at me and said, "I didn't think you'd come." I didn't reply. He said, "You didn't have to, but you did." Still, I stayed silent. Then he said, "I'm sorry for everything." I turned my face away. He didn't speak again. He went back to his room. I stayed in the kitchen, holding the glass tight. I wanted to say something, but nothing came out. The next few days passed quietly. He got better. He walked more. He smiled sometimes, but he didn't try to fix things. He didn't try to make me stay. And I didn't ask why he cheated. I didn't want the answer anymore. One afternoon, we sat on the balcony. The sun was warm. He looked at me and said, You saved me. I said nothing. He said, Not just from the crash, from myself. I still said nothing. He said, You were the only one who showed up. I thought about that for a long time. I didn't come to save him. I came to find answers. But somehow, in helping him, I had started to heal myself. I didn't forgive him yet. Maybe I never would. But I was not full of hate anymore. I was tired of carrying it. It felt good to let go, even a little. That evening I packed my bag. He watched me from the sofa. Are you leaving? He asked. Yes, I said. He nodded. I understand, he said. I left early the next morning. The streets were quiet. The sun was just rising. I drove back to the village in silence. As I reached my sister's flat, I looked at the sky. I did not know what the future would bring, but I knew one thing. I had saved someone who broke me, and somehow I had also saved myself. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. I returned to my sister's flat just as the sun rose. The early light made the trees glow softly. Everything outside looked peaceful, but inside me was a mix of tiredness and thought. I parked the car, turned off the engine, and stayed in my seat for a while. My hands stayed still on my lap. I wasn't sure if I felt better or worse. I only knew I was different. The door creaked as I entered the flat. Nothing had changed. The cushions were still on the floor. A tea mug I used last week sat on the table. It was quiet. It felt like the world had frozen while I had gone through a storm. I dropped my bag by the door, removed my coat, and walked to the kitchen. My feet felt heavy, but my mind kept running. I filled the kettle and waited. Steam began to rise, and I slowly poured hot water into a cup. I watched the tea darken and stood by the window. The sky had turned blue, and a few birds flew by. I noticed them, but my heart didn't react. The past few days had emptied me. I sipped the tea and let the warmth fill my chest. Helping him had not erased the pain. It had not made things right, but it had changed something inside me. I had done something kind, even when he didn't deserve it. I had stayed strong when I could have walked away. That gave me a strange sense of peace. Not joy, not closure, just peace. That day, I stayed indoors. I moved slowly through the flat, doing small tasks. I folded the blankets. I opened a window to let in fresh air. I played music, but didn't really listen. I wanted to feel normal, but my thoughts were not ready to be quiet. In the afternoon, I sat on the sofa with my legs curled under me. I didn't turn on the television. I just stared at the wall, thinking about what had happened. I didn't cry. There were no tears left. I had spent them all already. That night, I fell asleep early but woke up around midnight. The flat was dark, and the wind made soft sounds outside. I lay in bed with my eyes open. My body was tired, but my mind kept showing me scenes from the hospital, the balcony, the quiet goodbyes. I watched the darkness and waited for morning. The next week was slow. I returned to work and answered questions about my short break. I didn't tell anyone the truth. I said I was tired and needed time off. People nodded and didn't ask more. That made it easier. I sat at my desk and looked at old emails. My inbox was full, but nothing felt important. I replied to messages. I joined meetings. I smiled when I had to. But inside, I was still far away. My heart was still busy healing itself. In the evenings, I kept things simple. I made toast and soup. I washed dishes slowly. I read a few pages of a book, then forgot what I read. My focus wasn't strong, but I didn't push myself. I let each moment come and go. I didn't expect too much. A few days later, I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself closely. My face looked the same, but my eyes were different. They looked older, not in years, but in experience. I touched my cheek and whispered in my head, I made it through. I didn't fall apart. My sister returned from her trip on the weekend. She looked happy and rested. She hugged me tightly and said it was good to be back. We didn't speak about my time away at first. She let me move at my own speed. That was what I needed most. Space. I told her a short version of the story. No deep details. Just enough to help her understand. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded and made tea. We drank it in silence. That silence felt like care. With each passing day, I thought of him less. His face came to me sometimes in dreams or quiet moments. But I didn't feel the same pain anymore. It was still there, just smaller, like a scar. Something that stays but doesn't hurt. I didn't want him back. I didn't hope for a message. I didn't wonder if he missed me. Those thoughts used to keep me awake. Now they didn't visit me often. And when they did, I let them pass. One morning, I took a long walk by the river. The air was cool and the trees were full of color. Spring had arrived. The path was empty except for a few joggers. I walked slowly and looked around. I saw beauty again. That surprised me. I hadn't noticed beauty in weeks. At home, I started making small changes. I moved the bed to a different wall. I cleaned out the closet and gave away clothes I didn't wear. I bought a new lamp and a plant. These small acts helped me feel in control. They reminded me that this space was mine now. It belonged only to me. My sister said she wanted to move in with her boyfriend. She asked if I'd be okay living alone. I said yes. I meant it. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had faced something painful and come through it. Being alone didn't scare me now. It felt like a gift. I began cooking better meals. I lit candles at night. I wrote more in my journal. I made a playlist of songs that felt calm. These new habits helped me breathe again. They gave shape to my days. They helped me move forward. At work, I was given a new task. It needed focus and planning. I took it as a chance to grow. I stayed late a few days and found myself enjoying the challenge. My coworkers noticed and said I looked stronger. I smiled and said thank you. One Sunday afternoon, I cleaned my phone. I deleted photos from the past year. There were many of him and me. At first, I paused. Then I selected them all and deleted them. It didn't hurt. It felt like the right time. I found an old message from someone we both knew. She had sent me a note weeks ago saying she saw him in town. He was with someone new. I had replied that I was okay. Now, reading it again, I knew I had told the truth. He was gone from my life, and I didn't want him back. One night, I made tea and stood on the balcony. The stars were bright. The wind touched my skin. I looked at the sky and felt still. My heart didn't race. My eyes didn't fill. I felt calm. I had helped him when he needed it. I had walked away when it was time. I had cried. I had been angry. But I had let it go. I had made a home for myself. A life for myself. One step at a time. I was not the same person I was before the lie. I was someone new. Someone who knew how to love, how to forgive, and most of all, how to heal. Time passed, and the pain began to fade. I no longer woke up with a heavy chest. I no longer searched for his name in my phone. I stopped replaying moments in my head. My mind became quieter, and I felt lighter. I started thinking about the future, not about him, but about me. I focused on building routines that felt good. I set my alarm early and went for short walks before work. The cool morning air helped clear my thoughts. I enjoyed the sound of birds and the quiet of the street. These moments became part of my healing. They were small, but they mattered. At work, I stayed busy. The new task I had been given grew into a larger project. I worked with new people and learned new skills. I stayed late sometimes, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I liked feeling useful. I liked feeling respected. In the evenings, I cooked with more care. I started trying new recipes. Some turned out badly. Others were delicious. I began writing about them in a notebook. I wrote how each dish made me feel. Cooking became more than just eating. It became a way to express who I was becoming. I also spent more time with friends. I didn't talk about what had happened unless someone asked. Most didn't. They just welcomed me back with open hearts. We met for lunch, visited art shows, and sometimes sat in silence with tea. Being around people who cared reminded me that I was never truly alone. On weekends, I explored new places. I visited small towns, museums, and gardens. I took photos of flowers, clouds, and quiet streets. I started sharing some of them online, and strangers left kind comments. That made me smile, not because I wanted attention, but because it reminded me that my view of the world mattered too. One Saturday, I cleaned out the old storage boxes in the back of the closet. They were filled with things from the years we had spent together. Cards, tickets, photos, little gifts. I sat with them for a while. I let myself feel the memories one last time. Then I placed them all in a box and taped it shut. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't want to look at it anymore either. It went into the back of a drawer, out of sight, out of reach. That felt like the right place for it. Not gone, just put away. I started writing more in my journal. The words came easier now. I wrote about my days, my thoughts, and my hopes. I didn't worry about being right or wrong. I just let the words flow. Writing helped me understand myself better. It showed me how far I had come. Each month I felt stronger. I didn't rush my healing. I didn't pretend I was fine when I wasn't. But I noticed the little changes. I noticed that I laughed more. I noticed that my shoulders were not always tense. I noticed that my heart no longer felt cracked. I planned a short holiday alone, a quiet town by the sea. I booked a small room and took the train. During the ride, I watched the fields pass by. I thought about how far I had come from the woman who once felt lost. I had made this journey by myself, and I was proud of that. At the sea, I walked on the beach for hours. The wind played with my hair. The waves crashed gently. I let the salt air touch my skin. I picked up smooth stones and placed them in my pocket. Each one felt like a small gift from nature. I kept them as reminders that I had survived. I ate in small cafes. I read books under trees. I watched the sun rise and fall without needing to take photos. I was present in the moment. I didn't check my phone much. I didn't wait for messages. I didn't wish to be somewhere else. I returned from the holiday with a quiet joy in my chest. I unpacked slowly and placed the stones on the windowsill. They made the room feel peaceful. I smiled every time I saw them. They were simple, but full of meaning. My sister moved in with her boyfriend as planned. The flat became completely mine. At first, the silence was strong, but soon it became something I loved. I danced in the kitchen while cooking. I sang softly while folding clothes. I lit candles at night and read in bed. The space reflected who I was now. It was clean, calm, and safe. I added soft rugs, new plants, and a small desk near the window. I sat there in the evenings and wrote letters I didn't send. I wrote letters to my past self. I thanked her for surviving. I told her it was okay to let go. One morning, I looked in the mirror and saw someone I trusted. She looked like me, but not exactly. Her eyes held strength. Her smile was quiet, but sure. She looked like someone who had walked through a fire and come out steady on the other side. I didn't need closure from him. I didn't need more words or excuses. I had given myself the closure. I had done the hard work. I had healed because I chose to. Not because someone came to save me, but because I saved myself. I didn't forget what happened. I didn't pretend it was small. It had changed me, but it had also taught me. It showed me what I would never accept again. It showed me how much I could carry and still stand tall. As the seasons changed, I kept growing. I took a weekend class on photography. I joined a book club. I learned to make homemade bread. Each new thing added a layer to who I was. Each day became another chance to become someone I liked. I looked around one evening and felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt safe. Safe in my space. Safe in my body. Safe in my choices. There was no fear. No waiting for pain to return. Just quiet peace. Sometimes I walked past the old places we used to go. A part of me still remembered, but I didn't stop. I didn't need to. The past was a story I had already read. I didn't need to keep turning those pages. I had a new book now, and I was writing it myself. And in that story, I was not the one left behind. I was not the one broken. I was the one who stood up, even with shaking legs. I was the one who chose love for herself. I was the one who helped someone who hurt her, and then chose to leave for her own peace. That is the woman I became.